Avengers Infinity War. Whether you're a fan or not a fan, there is no way you can be in tune to the Hollywood film industry and not have heard of the hype around this film. This has been a film 10 years in the making with the Marvel Cinematic Universe over at Disney. Everything that they have been building and constructing all these years comes together in this cinematic spectacle. Let me start off by saying that the first half of this video will be completely spoiler-free. I will give my review with no spoilers and my final rating, and then, with plenty of warning, I will dive into spoiler territory for the latter half of this video. There was a lot building up to this film and a lot of expectations, so did this live up to mine? Yes and no. In talking about the film's story, without giving any spoilers, this is one gigantic thrill ride and one huge spectacle. That's exactly what they build this movie up to be, and that's exactly what it is. You definitely will not be bored. It is incredibly entertaining and very non-stop. This movie is also incredibly funny. I was busting up laughing throughout so many moments of the movie. All the jokes I felt like landed well. There was no cheesy slapstick humor, which I can't stand. Very smart, very witty, very quick, but it made the character interactions that much more fun. So this movie is made up of a shit ton of characters, and I want to talk about them without giving any spoilers away yet again. So, how are the characters? Well, I gotta say that the acting all around is very good. I don't feel like there is one weak link in the entire movie when it comes to acting ability and being able to deliver for their character. I was pleasantly surprised that they were able to balance so many characters in one movie really well. For the most part, not all of them. A major thing that this movie has in its favor is that through this movie alone, it got me emotionally invested in characters that I originally did not care about. I do now after this film. I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but I will list who I feel like were my favorite characters, and there's a shit ton of characters, but I'm only going to list my top few favorites that stood out to me the most. And the first one is, I'm going to cheat a little bit and clump them together, is the Guardians. Guardians of the Galaxy continues to this day to be one of my favorite MCU movies. The first one, not the second one. It's fine, but not as good as the first one. Other standouts for me were Thor and Iron Man and Doctor Strange. And that's all I'm gonna say. Those are it. So let's talk about Thanos without talking about Thanos. This is a villain that has been teased and built up through so many films over so many years, and there's a lot of pressure to deliver on this villain. And I think that they delivered on Thanos. I feel that Marvel has finally created their best and most menacing villain to date. I feel like Marvel has struggled with their villains in the past and making them very uninteresting, making them very two-dimensional, making me really not really give a shit about them because I felt that they were so disposable. And that is the issue with so many Marvel villains. He is a force to be reckoned with, and this is definitely his showcase film. He is very prominent, and I'm very, very happy with his performance and everything he brought to the table as a character. This film did struggle in certain areas, but without getting into spoilers, I will dive in a little bit into how I feel like this film wasn't perfect. And the first point would be, I felt that there was uneven pacing. I felt like these narrative moments would be slower and exposition heavy, and then action, 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 and then slower, and let's talk, and exposition, and then action set piece. I got that vibe more often than I wanted to, and that felt very up and down and choppy with how this movie presented itself. With such a large cast in this movie, there of course will be a struggle in finding balance, and it struck up many great balances with a vast majority of the characters, but it did falter with some characters, and I'm not going to reveal any, but there are definitely some characters that I felt like were either underutilized or underdeveloped, and there were some random cameos that felt a little bit out of place for me. So the overall positioning of characters wasn't perfect. There was one storyline, and there was no spoilers, not revealing anything, but there is one storyline with a select group of characters that I felt broke up the overall progressing story of the film. I felt that it definitely could have been reworked or redone in a way that would have been much better than it actually was. One of the greatest things about this movie overall is the shock factor. I highly recommend you go into this movie with no spoilers. At some point it's like, it's fair game, what the fuck's gonna happen? And that was fun. Avengers Infinity War is a really exciting film that is very funny with some great characters. It had me on the edge of my seat throughout the entire thing because, you know, survival plays a huge part in this movie, is who's going to survive. It did struggle with pacing and lacking in some key character development or character moments that I thought that it could have used to make it that much better. It's not the best Marvel film, but it was definitely an enjoyable watch, and I will enjoy watching it again. I'm going to give Avengers Infinity War a B+. And that is my non-spoiler review of Avengers Infinity War. Thank you for tuning in. We are now going to dabble into spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to be spoiled, turn off the video right now because we are going to dabble into some spoilers. Alright, in talking about the characters, I want to dive into who I feel was underutilized or underdeveloped. I was surprised at the complete lack of Captain America and Black Panther in this film, given how prominent they are on the marketing and how huge Black Panther has been this year. I was surprised that there was very little from them, especially from Black Panther. I felt like he was definitely a bit of an afterthought. And the same could be said for Team Captain in general, and by extension we have Bucky, we have War Machine, we have Black Widow. Bucky was practically not even there. I felt like he may have had like 2 lines, maybe. But if you're a Captain America fan and Black Panther fan, yeah, they barely, I felt like they hardly had anything to do in this film. Now, the cameo of Red Skull, I personally thought his cameo was random and a bit unnecessary. He was very creepy looking. He definitely kind of screamed like, oh my god, it's Satan, with his, you know, Dementor cloak and everything. I mean, that was effective and very cool visuals, but I felt like his presence and that cameo, though it had a moment of like shock value, I felt it was kind of random. I also thought that Thanos' henchmen, the Black Order, I thought that they would have been a bit more menacing than they actually were. They were a force to be reckoned with to a degree. One of them had a bit more to do, but again, I felt that they fell into the struggle that Marvel has had with villains in making them kind of a little less interesting and disposable. They felt disposable to me, and I expected more from them given the build-up with Thanos and his Black Order. Now, let's talk about the Guardians, and I think that they were great as ever in general, except for one character which I'm pissed at, but we'll get to in a moment. Now, I thought Gamora was given a lot of meat in this film specifically because they really dove into her history with Thanos and really tying her with Thanos. And I felt that it succeeded for the most part, but I do feel like her death scene could have been so much better. I was so sad, first of all, that they killed her, but I do understand the dramatic effect that overall outcome would have in general. So when they, you know, reveal that Gamora knows where the Soul Stone is, I thought that that would be tremendous opportunity for them to, you know, insert the Soul Stone in a setting or in someone to make the claiming of that stone way more impactful than it actually was. I actually thought it would have been cool if Gamora herself had been the Soul Stone, or somehow the Soul Stone was inside her, and that's how she would have to die in order for Thanos to take the Soul Stone from her. But I thought that him having to sacrifice someone he loved to get the Soul Stone on this random planet by throwing her off a cliff and then the Soul Stone reveals itself, I honestly felt like that was kind of lame, and that I felt like they pulled that out of their ass in the writer's room. Now, the one Guardians character that I am pissed at is Peter Quill. He is essentially the reason that half the cast dies in the end, by him getting all worked up about Gamora's death, which is understandable. I get it, but I couldn't help but feel so pissed off at him that his emotions took over his thinking yet again, and he kind of screwed over the rest of everybody. Now, the team up of Thor and the Guardians in general, I love this. I need more of this. I need this for all future Guardians and Thor movies. They just need to mash them together because that made for serious, entertaining movie fun to a whole new level. I loved it. Their dynamic, the humor, from Thor calling Rocket the little rabbit and saying, "I'm friends with the tree," when referring to Groot, everything was just so fucking hilarious. Speaking of other Avengers though, I really enjoyed the storyline involving Iron Man and Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. They were so great. I wasn't entirely sold on Doctor Strange as a movie originally, and I love Benedict Cumberbatch. Man, did he win me over. Man, they gave him some great moments in this film, real standout moments, and I listed him earlier in my non-spoiler review of one of my standouts was Doctor Strange. He was fantastic. Great dialogue with Tony Stark, and great with Spider-Man. Now let's talk about that storyline that I thought was a bit of a distraction or took away from the overall movie. And that is the storyline of Thor with Rocket and Groot on a mission to essentially go get Thor a new hammer, where they introduced Peter Dinklage as a dwarf, and a giant dwarf. I don't know the mythology of the comics and the history around this. Yes, I agree that Thor needs a hammer or a weapon of any nature, and I'm not opposed to a mission to go and get one for him, but this whole sequence felt a little bit random, especially with Peter Dinklage as a giant dwarf. When he first appeared on screen, it honestly felt a little silly and like, okay, this is kind of weird. I have a hard time believing Rocket would leave his team to go with a new random guy who's just gonna go shopping for a new weapon. But their chemistry is fantastic, and so I will forgive a portion of that, but ultimately I thought that storyline did take away from the overarching story overall. So, half the cast dies at the end of this movie, and that in and of itself is shocking. They evaporate and just poof, gone. And I was surprised that this movie left on such a quiet, hopeless note. Oh my god, it left you feeling like kind of hopeless. But how about that post-credits ending where they tease Captain Marvel? And Captain Marvel could be their Wonder Woman, and that excites me. And the fact that Captain Marvel is the MCU's first solo female hero that gets her own standalone film is awesome. And the fact that she is now their beacon of hope to help and save the day is exciting to me. And if she becomes the Wonder Woman of the MCU, then that much better. And look at this body count. I mean, holy hell. Like I said, like that, the shock factor alone of how many people and how many beloved characters who literally became dust in the end is astounding. And I want to give a shout out to Peter Parker's death in this film. That is the death that warranted swelled up tears for me. No one else really warranted it. It came close with Gamora, and we'll get to that in a moment, but I gotta say, that moment between Tony and Peter Parker, where Peter's saying, I don't want to go, and Tony's holding him before he dies, that got me. Going back to Gamora and Loki, who they killed off first, those are two characters that I'm worried and hoping that they are able to bring back, because I don't want them to be gone. I love Gamora in the Guardians of the Galaxy, and Loki is such an entertaining character in general. I really hope that they work some magic to bring them back. And then let's look at who is still alive, and that's not very many characters, but if you notice, they've kept the original Avengers alive, and some people are arguing that the next sequel will play homage to the original Avengers who will save the day and fight, and some of them might give their lives to bring back everyone else who's died, because I firmly do believe that the majority of everyone who disintegrated will be brought back, because a number of them are going to be carrying these movies forward after Captain America and Iron Man have wrapped it up. So that is my overall non-spoiler and spoiler review and thoughts and opinions around Avengers Infinity War. What did you think? Write your comments and thoughts down below. Thank you again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Ryan Bamey signing off. Bye everyone.